Hi, everyone. Welcome. We will have a few minutes to allow all attendees to just drop in and get GoToWebinar started. And then we will start the webinar on the half-yearly Sales and Impact Data Report soon. All right, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here for the webinar on the key findings of the Global Off-Grid Solar Market Report for the second half of 2019. So in the upcoming hour, we will present to you some key highlights of our latest sales data report. So we don't aim to cover everything that's in the report. So we're going to discuss trends and main insights. There's just simply too much in the report in terms of content, so we cannot cover everything. But we hope that you find the trends and the updates that we think are interesting, that you agree with that. In addition, we will just make sure that we have plenty of time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions you might have on anything that's in the report or on what we just shared. So very briefly, housekeeping. Everyone is muted. Proceedings will be shared afterwards, probably tomorrow. And if you have a question or if you want to flag a technical issue, this should go into the question box. So we will be very strict in timekeeping and only take 1 hour of your time. So I'm going to quickly go and get started. However, we want to know who is on the line. So as well as to what extent you are familiar with the report. And we'll do this through some poll questions. So I'm going to launch a poll right now, and you'll have to look at your screen and click which description best fits your organization. So are you a company with off-grid solar generation as a primary focus, so solar home systems or solar lanterns? Are you a company with off-grid solar appliances as a primary focus? So are you looking at TVs or fans or solar water pumps? Are you an investor or a DFI? A development partner or a government agency? Or are you in the bucket of others? I'll have 5 more seconds for you to vote, and then I will close the poll. So I'll share the results with you right now. I think maybe in the future we'll have to elaborate a bit on the other bucket. So we'll have around a third of companies with lighting as a general focus or as a primary focus, and about 40% of other. Then I'm going to immediately share the next poll, which is, we want to know if you already have heard of this report that we bring out every half year. So please do the same thing. Have a look at your screen and share with us if you know about the report. You can choose between, I'm not familiar at all, I've never read it. You can say, okay, I saw it, I saw one, I've never read it in detail though, or I've read at least one report, or you are like an avid subscriber to our publications and you read every single one of them. So again, I'll let it go for another 5 seconds. And I'll close. So this is actually quite interesting to see, I think also for our panelists. A third is really very familiar and always reads the report. So that's really fantastic to see actually. That's, we're glad to see that our efforts are, absorbed by many. And then the other third is also somewhat familiar. So that's really, really great. Also with kind of like making sure that you know how the report is set up and works. Okay, so this time around, and I think it's great with everyone being on the line already being familiar with the report, we will only spend a very brief moment on the background of the report and how all of this works. So if you want more details, this is actually described extensively in the report itself, and I want to refer to the link I just dropped in the chat box. There is a link. If you want to look into the report, you can do that there. If you want to know more details on the methodology or how it's set up, please have a look in the beginning of the report. So together with IFC Lighting Global and the Efficiency for Access Coalition, supported by funding from UK Aid, GOGLA conducts a half-yearly sales data collection. So we collect data on basically 2 product segments: off-grid solar lighting products, multi-light systems, solar lanterns, and solar home systems, and off-grid solar appliances, so TVs, fans, refrigeration units, and solar water pumps. Then we use a standardized impact metric framework to translate those sales into impact estimates that are also included in the report. The methodology of the collection can again be found in the report, and that's also where we outline all the measures that we take just to make sure that, or just to ensure complete confidentiality of this data collection for everyone participating. We really religiously stick to the confidentiality, but this also sometimes has implications on which data we can or cannot show for particular categories or countries. Again, everything is in detail explained in the report itself. Now, before we kick off, I actually, on behalf of all the partners, I want to share a message around COVID-19. So the trends and sale figures that are included in this report, they refer to the period of July-December 2019. And so these were recorded prior to the outbreak of COVID-19 and the unfolding crisis that is currently having far-reaching consequences around the globe. This report highlights how the off-grid solar industry is providing energy to over 100 million people around the world, with sales of 4.4 million off-grid solar lighting products and 460,000 off-grid solar appliances in these last 6 months of 2019. Now, if anything, this is a timely reminder that our affiliates are playing a critical role in providing homes and businesses with essential services, essential energy services, and these services will be even more vital as we respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. So these are rather unique times, but we do know that a growing economic crisis will heavily impact the off-grid solar industry. And so our immediate goal is to ensure that our industry can continue to provide these services and support its customers. So these off-grid solar products are powering mobile phones, TVs, radios, so they They enable key communication on government announcements and preventative measures. They're providing clean water through solar water pumps. They keep the lights on in health clinics. So really a large number of services, and a number of companies are also working directly with health officials to use their distribution networks to rapidly support the COVID-19 response. So together with other development partners, GOGLA and its partners are working on a number of measures to help the industry navigate the crisis. So we are compiling key resources and up-to-date information around the latest response and the latest measures on the GOGLA COVID-19 Resource Center that you can find the link in the slides that we will share afterwards. You see it here at the bottom right. We urge governments, investors, and the donor community to join us in protecting this vital industry and ensuring its impact is not lost but enhanced in the challenging months ahead. And so before we dive in, I want to share some examples of the impact the industry has on enabling energy access, but also on the positive economic impact it has on people's lives, as well as on the environment. So from the sales numbers that we have, we can already directly draw a picture of the geographical distribution where people are benefiting from energy access. Now, over the past year, we worked really hard to also be able to estimate accurately the regional distributions for these other two significant and important estimates. So people undertaking more economic activity and kerosene lanterns that are being replaced. And if you zoom in on one of the more mature markets, such as East Africa here, you see that from all people being more economically active, due to system ownership, like a big chunk of them is in East Africa, and also a similar picture is found for kerosene replacement. So yeah, as I referred to earlier, these estimates are produced using a standardized impact measurement framework developed and managed by GOGLA and partners. And it's really just to illustrate the significant impact and social consequences that the sector has. So, so for companies interested in the impact that their products are creating, I would say, please check out this impact work, participate in the sales data collection, even better, because we will give you these numbers as well every half year. And then we also have an online calculator tool that we have developed, which you can use to estimate the impact based on your product numbers as an input. Again, links will be shared in the slide deck. Any questions on this, you can drop in the question box. But let me now move on to introducing the content team of the report, who will make up the expert panel of this webinar. Myself, I'm Eveline. I don't think I even introduced myself. I'm the Outreach and Impact Manager at GOGLA, and I'll be moderating the session. We have Sylvia, who I think also everyone is almost familiar with, who is our data guru at GOGLA. We have Salman on behalf of IFC Lighting Global. We have Leo, who is representing EST, and we have McKenna from CLASP. I will leave it to them to say a short sentence about themselves once they start. They have all picked highlights, which we will share with you in the upcoming, let's say, 25 minutes. And at the end of their highlights, we will have them Q&A session. So don't forget to drop your questions in the question box. And if you'd like to ask them to a specific panelist, by the way, please note that panelist's name in the question as well. Sylvia, are you ready to take on the first insight?
I believe I unmuted myself. So yeah, I work as GOGLA as a database specialist, and when I was asked to pick the first highlight, definitely for me is the one you see on the screen. So we started looking at the evolution of specific product categories even more this time around, and because we often talk about the evolution of solar home systems, but when you unbundle it, you can also see the difference of some categories that we have within the solar home system. So in the case of my highlight, I picked the 11 to 20 and the 21 to 49 watt peak. to start with, they registered this 17% growth spike, and they reached almost 500,000 units sold, and the predominantly as sold on PayGo. And for me, it's really important to showcase these two categories, and especially the one 29 to 49 is increasingly driven by also the sales of entertainment appliances and information appliances such as TVs. And here you can see also the evolution of such system broken down by geographical region. I picked the three most uh, relevant ones, so East Africa, West Africa, and South Asia, to showcase that it seems that also there's slightly different trends even within sub-Saharan Africa. And note that East Africa and West Africa are defined with the UN definition, meaning that you can find on the in the report. And for example, for me, it was quite interesting to see that in West Africa, we see quite a stability in the 29 to 49, while there is increases in East Africa. And in South Asia, we have seen decreases across several categories due to the decreases in sales in India specifically, while the 29 to 49 VAT peak is still stable with 28,000 units sold. So yeah, I wanted to a bit present again this graph that I think was also on the report, because it shows how much growth there has been, also thanks to the affordability increased by PayGo in this product segments for the off-grid solar customers.
Hello. Yes. Thank you, Sylvia. Hello, everyone. I'm Salman. I'm working in the Lighting Global Business Development Services and Client Management team. And of course, for today's webinar, the first key insight from my end was to kind of delve into the cash and PayGo split that we see in the sales. Of course, payment mechanisms are becoming more and more important to kind of analyze and kind of go do deep dives in. And just taking a regional lens to this payment mechanisms that are kind of being preferred by the consumers, I feel gives a lot of insights for companies, new and old, to kind of set their strategies. So again, a lot of the data that we are discussing on, there is much more in the reports themselves, but I'll just focus on what we are seeing in sub-Saharan Africa and in South Asia in terms of cash sales and PayGo sales. Overall, of course, in 2019 globally, we saw 4.4 million products sold, and 73% of that was sold on cash basis. So cash is still king. Of course, this was a 4% boost. So we are still seeing some increase in cash sales. Again, PayGo, we have seen globally that we have reached new high numbers of 1.19 million. So this was a 19% increase from last round. So out of this, a lot of that has come from sub-Saharan Africa. So I said 1.19 million of PayGo product, and you can see that 1.09 million has come from sub-Saharan Africa itself. Even for cash, sub-Saharan Africa has been the leading market this time. In contrast, for South Asia, we have seen a decrease in cash sales products. And of course, PayGo has never been the preferred sales that we have seen in South Asia. It has predominantly been cash sales that we have seen. So just kind of to go a bit more in depth, because when we see sub-Saharan Africa posting this much sales numbers in cash and in PayGo, which region in particular is like which sub-regions are kind of contributing to this sales? We see that East Africa, out of the 1.8 million sold in cash, 1.5 million is sold in East Africa on cash basis, and out of the PayGo sales of 1.13 million, 0.89 million is sold in East Africa as PayGo. So again, East Africa single-handedly kind of contributes to the largest amount of increase in sub-Saharan Africa. whereas West Africa, Central Africa both show a slight decrease in cash sales, but PayGo sales overall across the board in Africa we see increase. So that's also kind of great insight to see. So again, for South Asia, as kind of Sylvia also mentioned, this time around, cash sales is around 98% of the sales in India, and India is the single largest contributing country to the sales in South Asia. So we have seen a decline in overall India sales, and this has multiple reasons. We have tried to explore some of them in the report as well. So that is something to see. And the other reason for the decline that we see in cash sales in South Asia is due to the lack of bulk sales this round in Bangladesh. So again, just important to kind of go beyond the overall regional numbers to kind of go by country. It gives great insights, and I thought that was very interesting to kind of see and highlight. So that's from my end. I think I'll hand over to Leo next.
Thank you, Salman, and hello everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, thanks. So I'm a business development advisor and off-grid energy access specialist, consulting with the Lighting Global programs and efficiency for access, and representing E4A on this call, as we said earlier. So what we'd like to zoom in on here, the slide is focusing on the all appliances overview. So this is where we wanted to give you an overview of how many off-grid energy efficient appliances were sold overall. And then if you look at the table on the graph on the left, you'll see this split down between the first figure. We have sold over, there have been reported, I should say, from the affiliates here in this exercise, for just under 500,000 appliances of all kinds. And this is broken down on the left, where you can see a few different colors used for every different kind of appliance. And this enables us to look, as we did before, at the overall how many sold, how many by cash, how many by PayGo. What we generally are seeing here are the major sales in the area of TVs and fans, and which my colleague McKenna will go into in detail on further slides. And then much smaller sales for refrigeration units and solar water pumps. And what we want to point out here is that this is as to be expected, seeing as that these are more nascent technologies with the refrigeration units and the solar water pumps. We do go into some detail on what kind of refrigeration units we're talking about in the report, so you can see the difference. But generally, we're talking about chest freezers that are opened and horizontally, as it were, and that gives us a segment of the market that doesn't include the large walk-in chillers or beyond. And the same with the solar water pumps. But what's particularly interesting is that these are the small holder solar water pumps, and we're starting to see traction in this area. We did see a considerable increase in the sale of these solar water pumps in this round. And again, it's really important to emphasize, and what I want to draw attention to, is that this is a subset of the larger solar water pumps market that most people are familiar with. We're not counting community scale pumps. We're not counting those very large, which do irrigation for a whole institution or for a community. This is focusing on the smallholder farmers or for small commercial uses of these pumps, which we're starting to see. And that helps this report be a very good tracker of how this new segment is developing. Particularly what we're seeing is that, as you see, there's a very simple split between PayGo and cash, where almost all of the televisions, frankly, are being sold under pay-as-you-go that we're having reported. And those are largely concentrated in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, whereas we have the flip side for fans, almost all of those being sold. And sorry, just to give the figures for TV. So we're about 280,000 televisions overall. These are specialist DC off-grid TVs, of which 250 were PayGo, only 30 cash. And then on the flip side, of nearly 150,000 fans, of which the cash were 134,000. So that, and those are almost entirely in South Asia. So it's really interesting to notice how at the moment these appliances are really being grouped in different regions of the world where they're serving different functions. In the case of the fans, going to the more hot and humid parts. is a large trend. Whereas on the side of TV, we're seeing the trend where they're being demanded and packaged largely with the PayGo product. So very different drivers for both, but it is very interesting to see that some of these appliances are now starting to actually be a driver for demand for the solar home systems, or at least it's starting to be recognized. And so with that, I'll leave it to my colleagues to go into more depth on the specifics. Thanks.
Thank you all. I'm McKenna. I work for CLASP. I head up the research work under the Efficiency for Access Coalition. So in my highlights, I wanted to focus on the trend or what we're seeing. So this is the third time that we have collected these sales figures for appliances specifically. And you can see those 3 different colored bars on the right-hand side of your screen showing how this has evolved over time. So the good news is appliance sales are ramping up. We are seeing a nice kind of upward growth in appliance sales, and I'll talk about this few inflections that are driven by fans. But if you, for example, look at TVs, they really show just a nice kind of trajectory upwards, which is really encouraging, showing that the market is kind of slowly getting there, increasing year on year. In terms of refrigeration units and solar water pumps specifically, we're still seeing a few glitches. The refrigeration sales remain a bit steady. We had a dip in the last data collection round, but which has recovered in this round. But you can see there that that's not as consistent, for example, as TVs. For solar water pump, a huge increase this time round. So that's interesting for us to see. And in the report, we try to unpack some of the reasons why there are this kind of inflection and changes. The one I want to draw attention to is the fan market in South Asia. This one, it really drives the total number of appliance sales because we typically only focusing on these 4 appliances in terms of reporting in such granularity. And those fan sales are really kind of drive the overall appliance number. So this year we saw a drop in the fan sales. This was primarily driven by Bangladesh, or reporting coming from Bangladesh, where there's been kind of a subsidy program, the IDCO program, sort of coming to an end, or the RBF scheme associated with that coming to an end. But also there's some seasonality that I think we will continue to observe. I think the next time we collect sales data, you know, at the same seasonal time as we did the other time, we might see these differences coming in, because the kind of patterns that most manufacturers are using to sell products is kind of bulk orders at the beginning and then selling them throughout the year, right? As the year gets hotter from about March onwards. And that's sort of driving how the numbers we're seeing here get reported. I think it's also interesting, it'll be really interesting to see how the market progresses in terms of especially the products that are starting to feel quite ubiquitous in the off-grid solar markets like TVs. We're almost starting to take for granted that this is an appliance that is being sold in this market. So I think it's going to be really exciting to see this progression, or to continue to see what the trends are going forward. Thanks. Hand it back over to Evelyn.
Thanks, McKenna. I'm actually just going to pass it straight on to Sylvia again for a second round of insights from everyone.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have a second round this time, and so we can share a bit more with you, hopefully sparking some new questions that you can always pop in the chat box, and we're going to take them at the end of this round. Yeah, so as I said before, the first 2 categories of 11 to 20 and 21 to 49, we unpacked a bit what the trends were there. And then now I want to look into the largest solar home system that we collect. Currently, we still segment 50 to 100 watt peak, and then we just collect 100 plus altogether. Of course, in the 100 plus, you will see that there is already systems that are over 1 kilowatt or even over 2 kilowatts sold. But for now, we kept it this way because of there's not as many players in every country. We want to enhance visibility as we protect the confidentiality. So you will see here also in the graph, some data points are missing because there were not enough companies reporting to show them, but we can see at least some of the trends. And particularly what we saw that was interesting is that this system are much less sold on PayGo than others, and this is driven by the fact that this system are also largely sold in South Asia and East Asia and Pacific, which don't have the same penetration on PayGo that East or West Africa have. And actually, specifically, we saw that the 50 to 100 watt peak had shown decreases in all regions. So you can see it here in East Africa, West Africa, and South Asia, but there was a large spike in East Asia and Pacific. And those systems are also reported sold on cash, because these are sold often through government bulk procurement or general bulk procurement. Therefore, they figure as cash products because they're sold in one single transaction. And you can see that there's this quite large spike. And for the first time also, that there's enough companies reporting to show the magnitude of the 100 plus watt peak in East Asian Pacific, which is the largest market for such systems. So we have 55,000 units sold, or at least it is for our affiliates. So I think this was very interesting for us to see and to gain visibility, and seeing also how, you know, these segments are seeing even larger growth in terms of percentage, yet they're still smaller in terms of absolute numbers, especially the 100 plus watt peak, but they are showing interesting growth, and partly are also driven by appliances. So especially in the 50 to 100 watt peak, a lot of the system may be sold with appliances, but in general, it seems like there is demand for larger system growing for our affiliates based. And yeah, I think I'll pause there, and you will receive the slides with all the specific percentage change that you can also access in the report. And I'm happy to answer any questions on this slide or other topics. And I will hand over to Salman for his second insight.
Thank you, Sylvia. Great. So for the second insight from my end, what I have focused on is basically just on the portable lanterns category, and the divide here has been for lanterns that can charge cell phones and the lanterns that cannot charge cell phones. So again, lanterns that cannot charge cell phones here has been represented by the 0 to 1.5 indicative wattage, and the lanterns that can charge cell phones is 1.5 to 3 watt peak. And you know, from my end, I feel it's very important to keep the portable lanterns, you know, overall market trends in you know, in focus, because it's 64% of the global sales. This time it was a global sale number of 2.81 million units sold. That's massive, and Sub-Saharan Africa alone accounted for 63% of all the portable lantern sales. So again, that's also a very interesting point, that, you know, Sub-Saharan Africa alone kind of is showing strong growth. And even in Sub-Saharan Africa, if we go again take that regional, sub-regional kind of approach, we'll see that East Africa kind of shows growth in both the 0 to 1.5 watt peak and the 1.5 to 3 watt peak range, whereas for West Africa, we see single lanterns with mobile charging showing an increase, whereas single lanterns without mobile charging kind of shows a bit of decrease. And another you know, important region for products like these portable lanterns would be the MENA region, because we see a lot of you know, bulk sales happening there, and that kind of tilts the balance from time to time. So this time around, we saw that in the mobile charging lanterns with mobile charging capacity, there has been a decrease from over 350,000 in the last round to around 150,000 this round. And finally, if we come to South Asia, which is the second biggest market in the world, we saw a decrease in both the single lanterns and the single lanterns with solar charging capacity. So the single lanterns came down to 243,000, and the lanterns with mobile charging capacity came to 430,000 in South Asia. and again driven by the decrease that we have seen in India. But the main portion of this insight that I wanted to focus on was that for both lanterns without mobile charging and ones with mobile charging options are nearly neck to neck. You'll see that it's 1.48 million to 1.33 million units sold. But one thing, and while majority of it is in cash basis, the interesting portion is to track and see that PayGo is slowly carving a position for itself in the category, especially in the mobile charging category, with 210,000 sales in the last period. So that's 14% of all lanterns with mobile charging options, and 18% of all products sold as PayGo. So it's definitely becoming significant in terms of volume, and again even in terms of consumers gravitating towards the preferred payment option for mobile charging options. We are definitely seeing that PayGo is becoming more and more important in the portable lantern category. So, and I feel that this would have interesting kind of insight for manufacturers who are thinking of their portfolios. Any portfolio decision or market decisions would be kind of aided, but again we would need to kind of see in the next round as well whether this increase is continuing or whether we see something else due to the COVID situation. In the single lantern category, you will see that there are some bars missing in the chart that is at the bottom, and that is because it did not meet the 3 data point rule, and we could not kind of give the cash and PayGo split. But at the same moment, when we cannot give that, it also indicates that there has been at least a bit of sales in PayGo in the single lanterns without mobile charging option. So that's also interesting in the sense that it's not only that mobile charging ones are seeing PayGo, we are seeing PayGo kind of proliferating into the single lantern category a bit as well. But for now, we can say that the vast majority of the single lantern without mobile charging is sold on cash basis. So yeah, that was my second insights. Happy to kind of take questions on these. I know these were more regional and a lot of numbers were thrown, but they're all in the reports as well, and happy to again answer any questions as well. So I'll hand over to Leo next.
Thank you again, Salman. So jumping back, actually this slide kind of brings together both elements of the solar home system sales and the appliances. As what I wanted to do, and it could be a bit obvious, is just to draw the parallel between the fact that the sales of larger solar home systems are driving people's access to a higher tier of energy services using the multi-tier framework. And so what you can see on the left is a very simple 2 sets of graphs which show how the solar home system sales volumes have increased over time on the top, and then how the levels of the number of people with access to tier 2 under the multi-tier framework is provided at the bottom. Now, we won't go into in depth to describe more about the multi-tier framework. We've got a lot of information on that, both in the main report, where we give a wide variety of impacts from access to energy, and using appliances is critical for them. So I just wanted to draw our attention to the key point is that in order to reach tier 2, your solar home system needs to be able to power a television and or fan in regions where fan is needed for a minimum of 6 hours a day. So what we are seeing is that link is enshrined in the level of access, that these appliances can be powered. And that's as far as this link goes. It's not saying that's how many are, it's just saying that people could have access. And so if you take that and match it with our anecdotal experience from the field, what we're beginning to hear and see in certain markets are that customers are coming in saying, I would like a TV to be powered by a solar kit. Can you sell me that? So we really are starting to see a much more significant drive for appliances. We're seeing many of the solar descos in particular expanding their ranges to include at least trials or some very successful sales of solar powered refrigeration units and solar water pumps. So overall, this increase in the sales of our affiliate solar home systems is significantly pushing up people with tier 2 energy access. And very simply, this means that people are both getting more access to productive use appliances, or those that can transform domestic livelihoods, or they're actually just increasing their existing level. So we've got a lot of new connections, and we've got a lot of people moving up. We are starting to see a whole wealth of insights on what income generating and livelihood improving conditions these are creating. But again, that's not within this report. We just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we're starting to see sales to back up these findings, and direct you all to look at the efficiency for access resources for some really great deep dives into particularly solar water pumping refrigeration use and how that's driving livelihoods, and the same on the GOGLA side to look into the recent reports in the Impacting Livelihood series, both on East and West Africa, I believe into South Asia now, where we're particularly seeing how televisions can impact people's quality of life. So with that, I just put a final plug for the impact section of the main report, because we won't be able to do justice to that today, but some really valuable insights there, as I'm sure Evelyn is going to touch upon. So thank you very much, and I hope these insights have contributed to your.
Thanks. So for my second insights, I wanted us to maybe dive deeper into one of the appliances. So I didn't choose fans because although they have huge numbers of sales, they can sometimes be skewed by, certain companies that have really, really high sales, or can be skewed by country. And then for solar water pumps and fridges, they are still quite nascent. So to really have a balanced and more robust picture of the appliance market, the TV is a really great contender to look at. We've seen this growth match the growth as well of the larger solar home systems, as Sylvia mentioned, and as Leo has also really reiterated. That is really where we are seeing this ability to power an appliance, and the sales of TVs have just been growing and growing with those sales in the larger solar home systems. And then in terms of the evolution of what kind of TVs are making their way into the market or are being demanded by people, really it seems to be the medium and larger categories. You can see there what we classify as medium and large, the diagonal measurements in inches. And that's really, we've seen that from a global picture, but even when we dive into the regions, that still is the case, that you see the medium and the larger TV being the highest sales and continuing to grow. So those portions continue to grow over time, whereas we are seeing the small TV sales numbers start to shrink. Especially in East Africa, really few small TVs being sold. Really the demand now is mainly in West Africa, and then a little bit in other parts of the world. And I think we can infer, having seen the trajectory that was taken in East Africa, that perhaps a similar trajectory might happen in West Africa. And I think this also accords really interestingly with the fact that in West Africa, we're still, the sales of the larger systems are a little bit behind than East Africa for the people who've reported. And that just really accords with kind of the size of TVs that are being sold. Also, another thing that's really driving this kind of focus into medium and large, and moving also into extra large TVs beyond 30 inches, is the efficiency of the TVs. So we're seeing a trend towards higher efficiency of TVs. The difference between kind of a medium TV, for example, and extra large in terms of amount of power it needs is not as big as it used to be. And that kind of drives, you can couple them with the smaller solar home system, and that can really drive that, want. It's an aspirational product, but also if you can power it with a moderately sized solar home system, then it becomes a really interesting offering for our consumer. So I think we're going to see the extra large category continue to grow. We're going to see the small category shrink, especially in East Africa, perhaps start to grow a little bit in West Africa, but I think over time, overtaken by the medium category too. And we just took a small plug here. If you look in the efficiency for access website, we have a Equip data platform, which really charts costs of TVs, the trends in efficiency, and there you can like dig into the nitty-gritty of what's happening in terms of the technology, where it's moving in terms of its efficiency and cost. And we will also be later on in this year summarizing that in a data trends report to let you know what we've been seeing in the last couple of years for 4 appliances, all 4 appliances that we've been talking about here. And with that, I think I'll hand over back to the GOGLA team, and also really happy to answer questions on this and anything else that is important or relevant to people.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, McKenna. Yeah, we are gonna go directly to the Q&A session. We have a lot of questions, so I'm gonna ask all the panelists to, of course, answer as good as possible, but also please keep it also as brief as possible, and still encouraging everyone to keep dropping questions. Salman, I have a first one for you from Monica Liang. It's very interesting to see East Africa doing much better in sales than West Africa. Is there any reason behind this? And she also says, also, as you can see, the PayGo sales have just started in South Asia. Does that actually mean that PayGo has large potential to explore here?
Okay. Thank you, Monica, for that very interesting question. So I'll start with the second part of that question of kind of PayGo's attractiveness for South Asia. So again, if we look at what would make a market attractive for PayGo, a lot of the indicators for South Asia kind of ticks off that yes, there is off-grid population. There are providers that can give PayGo products. Again, mobile money is present, although the usage of it is not that prevalent yet. But there are some mobile money providers. But even with kind of the conditions that are there, PayGo hasn't really picked up in South Asia. And one of the reasons that over time that the teams on the ground from the IFC side and what we have understood is 2 things. One, of course, that people are still not very conversant in using mobile money, which is kind of like a prerequisite for the PayGo. And the second is there are alternate providers for the same thing that PayGo gives. So for example, if PayGo is giving us the ability to pay over time, there are MFIs in there that kind of gives the same amount of same installation approach where you can pay for a product in installations. And finally, affordability, because normally historically we have always pushed PayGo products for larger systems, and we have only begun to see kind of the uptake of larger systems in India and in South Asia. Again, Bangladesh is a bit different, but then again in Bangladesh historically the ITCall program, they have been selling in installments, so kind of in a PayGo approach without the technology. So that would be for the PayGo potential, that there, while the conditions are there, with the kind of rising electrification and everything, it still remains to be seen whether PayGo would take off or not. Till now, the sales numbers and everything has indicated that that is not the case. Now coming to the next question of East Africa to West Africa, and again I'll also kind of encourage other panelists to kind of also weigh in on this. But East Africa is a much more matured market, and again the conditions, the enabling environment has been much more conducive for sales. We have all seen groundbreaking mobile money payment systems taking off in East Africa, and that has definitely pushed the sales of numbers in East Africa higher. West Africa is catching up. Certainly, we are seeing numbers rising in Nigeria this time. A healthy increase in PayGo as well. and West Africa is definitely catching up overall. But again, East Africa still, because of the number of players and because of the, it's higher in the curve in terms of the number of players, and again the consumers as well.
Yes.
Their overall understanding of PayGo and these systems are much higher than in West Africa.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the only thing I would add is that we are seeing increases of PayGo steadily in West Africa. 2019 was much larger than 2018. So I would say that we are going to see more. And I also, with our newest representation in West Africa with Namori, for the GOGLA team, I think we have also gained more participation from companies in the region. So we shed a bit more light on affiliates, like the affiliates contribution is enlarging in West Africa. So I do foresee the numbers will probably keep increasing, but let's stay tuned and see about that.
Fantastic, thanks guys. We need to move through the questions a bit faster, guys. Otherwise we'll never get to the end. I have a question. I think I'm going to bundle two together. It's on TV, so McKenna, I think this one will be for you, and then of course I invite Leo to add if he would like. So there's two. There is one that says, can we understand most of the TVs are DC based, or do we find an emergence of AC appliances? And the second question is, what are the critical trends that you see that tend to drive increase in TV sales in East Africa specifically?
Thanks for that, Evelyn. So yes, these are mainly DC TVs because of the kind of affiliate companies that we are getting sales data from, right? They are selling solar home systems and therefore DC appliances with those, and specifically for TVs, which tend to come bundled most of the time. We do on equip data, you can find information on AC TVs too and DC TVs if you're interested in their efficiency or affordability or technical details about AC TVs that are appropriate for the off-grid market. In terms of critical trends, I think, or the things that are driving those trends, I think we're just starting to see more players in the market, obviously more solar home system companies bundling TVs or selling TVs as that first appliance or as an add-on appliance. That availability is definitely driving sale. They're getting better, the TVs. I think anecdotally, when I've been in the field and seen what the TVs were looking like a couple of years ago versus now, the quality is high. You get the same viewing experience as you would, what people would call a conventional TV. And so then the demand from people is for information, for entertainment, specifically the entertainment. Really, when we do the use and benefit reports where we try to understand what people use their TVs for, entertainment and news are driving in terms of content, what people are interested in them for. So I think it's about the sale of appliances, it's about the quality getting better, and then it's about demand, because people, it's just like the information and entertainment piece is really being demanded by the off-grid consumer.
Great. I'll just add it quickly. I think what we're emphasizing here is there's a nascent demand. There's nothing new in that people have wanted access to this kind of technology. What we're seeing is that there are better quality, more efficient, lower cost TVs being made available now in a very easy fashion. So it's business model innovation, technology innovation, pricing innovation. You're seeing some companies even bundling up with satellite providers so that you can have satellite access with a solar powered kit in a rural setting. Quite remarkable levels of business model and technology combinations with affordable pricing. So quite straightforward. Back to you, Evan.
Perfect, thanks. Sylvia, there is a question from you that already came in a little bit at the beginning. So how would you explain the fact that while volume of PayGo products of all categories is increasing, the value is decreasing? And this is a question based on pages 17 and 18 of the report. So is there potentially, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And I believe the whole research team, when we saw that happening, is one of the first things we really dig in because it was really shocking, to see, the volumes going up, the value. And for those that are not familiar with the value, it's computed using the total cost of ownership to give an idea on what's the monetary value in US dollars of this PayGo products. And we identified not one reason, but actually 3 different reasons for this. One is that some companies have reported lower total cost of ownerships for SHSs than rounds before. This, of course, reduces the overall value. And several companies did that. So that was one thing that we noticed. And another thing is that we have seen an increase of, as someone was pointing out, of lanterns being sold on PayGo. And at the same time, especially in East and West Africa, as I presented, there were decreases in the 50 to 100 and the 100 plus VAP peak, especially on PayGo. Therefore, in the moment you have more volumes of small system and less volume or large system, of course, there is a balance that is sort of tilted, and then the value seems to be going down. This does not mean necessarily that the monetary value is becoming less interesting. It just depends and needs to be looked at the size of the system that are sold. More of it and more details are in the report, but I hope that will at least give a bit of an understanding.
Thanks, Sophia. That's really clear. Leo, I'm going to combine 2 questions that are a bit more on background and methodology. Just very quickly, a clarification question is that if you say TVs by PayGo, do you mean that the TV is sold in the package of solar home system, or for PayGo payment as a whole? And the second part is more generally on the data collection of the appliances. Do you also collect data on productive appliances in addition to solar water pumps? And then we're talking about products such as agriculture machinery, healthcare, and also what are the insights here on the growth of pulse appliances?
Absolutely, yes. As quick as I can. So when we say PayGo, it simply means that a product is sold on that through that payment mechanism. And the bottom line are that there are televisions are generally only being sold on PayGo by descos. So they may be sold in a bundle at the time of sale with the solar home system, or as a level up sale later to pre-existing owners, particularly when they've proven a credit rating, then they can get access to additional appliances from the same provider. We're not seeing non-solar companies operating a PayGo platform to sell appliances. Yeah, the PayGo platforms are coming from descos generally as a rule. There could be some sale of televisions and others by hire purchase, etc., or by MFIs, which would also qualify for being called PayGo here, because when we say PayGo, it means anything that is sold on an installment. But generally, the rule is that the vast majority of all of what we're calling PayGo sales here are from the descos, who are the energy access specialists, who are bundling in a TV at point of sale or later. And the same would go for any of those appliances. In terms of the scope of appliances here, the focus is being driven by that of off-grid appliances, and by that we're looking at high efficient solar appliances which do have productive uses, but we have not gone out to find, so we do not include healthcare appliances, and we also do not include just any kind of agricultural devices. What we do is we have a affiliate connection with hundreds of companies that we leverage for this, and so that's the dragnet. Whatever products those companies are selling, we ask them to voluntarily report, and we aggregate them together. There are many appliances that are not sold in sufficient volume to be reported as individual appliances right now, and so we have some hair clippers, some irons, egg laying innovation improvements for egg incubation and such. But the bottom line here is that we can only ever share data that has a minimum of 3 data points, and that really works against any of these super nascent technologies. So we don't include the nascent technologies. We're working on new methodology, so in future rounds we hope to show more visibility, so watch that space. whereas most of what you're pointing at is not really included in the sector yet, because we are looking at the smaller scale DC devices, not large village scale diesel power, etc. These are small solar powered appliances that can have domestic or productive use. Happy to follow up on that question offline if the individual would like more detail on that.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Leo. That's really clear. Actually, what we will do is, because there are so many questions coming in, and we really would love to answer all of them, but there's no time in this webinar. So what we'll do is we will share all the questions with the panelists, and tomorrow, when we're sending out the proceedings of the webinar, we will include answers to the questions that were asked, so that we can, make sure that still everyone, that everything is clear as possible for everyone. Now, before you go, I want to check a quick poll, because we want to know to what extent this webinar was insightful for you. The reason for this is because we are holding this webinar every half year, and we want to make sure that it's as useful as possible. If you have tips or feedback for us, you can either drop that in the question box, or you can email me. You can we're always looking to make this this hour of your time as useful as possible. So thanks very much for voting. The last thing that I want to share for you, there's the report page. Please go and visit to check out some data visualizations that we have prepared for you. If you want to know more on the impact, this is the link to the Impact Hub. So how do we get to our impact estimates? And if you are interested in more data insights or in reporting your sales, do not hesitate to reach out to Sylvia. And with that, it's 3 p.m. sharp, and I want to thank you for your time. And we'll look forward to staying engaged and staying in touch. And my panelists, thank you so much, Leo, McKenna, Salman, and Sylvia. You have fantastic insights and great answers to questions.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.